Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's Mark Edwards here from the Channel Zone, and we have with us today another Mark, Mark 2, Mark Shephard. Mark, how are you?
Absolutely fabulous. Thank you, Mark, for asking. You can
Super.
call me Shep if it's easier, because people will just get confused, won't they?
Yeah, no, I think it is. And for those who don't know, Shep is the EMEA Cloud Alliances Leader for Okta. I quite like the idea of Okta because it's one of the only times when I can refer to a company and actually not have to ask if I pronounced it correctly, because so many others have names that I can hardly get my head around. Although saying that, I am going to have to ask you, what the heck is extensibility? I mean, and I'm hoping you can clear that up for me. I had a look at the
Comes
website.
after exclusivity in the dictionary, I suspect. But extensibility is, if that was the word you used, I
It
guess it's
was.
just the ability to extend your propositions over a platform play, because Okta, for example, is a platform play. So by nature and definition is extensible. You can
It
start
is
small and
extensible, but I don't know about you. I've never used the word extensible before. I had to check with ChatGPT, and it informed me that, as I said, it's a kind of Lego analogy in some respects. Is how it described it to me. You can continue to build out. You don't have to kind of trash the whole thing and whatever. So you've been at Okta a while. I did a deep dive into your LinkedIn profile earlier on today. It said, because I think you've probably got, I don't know, you won't meet many people with with even a similar career. You've had quite a unique career, certainly before coming into the kind of tech industry. So in the dim and distant past, or maybe we won't say exactly how long ago it was, but after your time at university, you went to Loughborough, and you came, although you studied business, I think, when you were there, but you then went into the armed forces and Sandhurst, officer training, and so on. And then after maybe a 9 or 10 year career, then transitioned. Am I even allowed to say? Is it? Do they call it Civvy Street? I mean, isn't
absolutely. I
that
think that's still a
right?
phrase you can use. Yeah, 100%.
Right. And so you transitioned then from the armed forces, from the army, then into, I think it was Reuters was your, so Reuters, kind of, I don't know, it was a tech proposition, but it was in the financial markets, so a little bit in the kind of financial banking industry for a while, and then I would say moving into tech with Sun Microsystems, a wonderful, glorious company from, again, the dim and distant
Dot
past.
com
And then
boom. That will age us. The dot com boom.
was that mid 90s or late
Late,
90s
well,
then?
2000s, 2000s.
Right, okay. Well, dot com. I was in the dot com boom much earlier than that. Bear in mind, I had a CompuServe account in 1994. On my 30th birthday in 1994, I had a computer in my study at home, and we were downloading pictures from NASA. I remember coming in a line at a time. Nobody had ever seen anything quite like it at that point. But since then, let's just kind of give you some of the highlights, if I can, Mark, before we kind of dig in a little more. From Sun, you've got to say some great luminaries there. Symantec kind of pop up, and that's where we would have met a number of years ago. But you've also worked at the likes of kind of Zscaler, Tanium. Your AWS, a period there, and of course now you find yourself at Okta. Quite a career. And now at EMEA Cloud Alliances Leader. What does an EMEA Cloud Alliances Leader do?
It's a great question. Principally, with a glue between the Okta sellers and the AWS sellers is probably the simplest way to position it. So we talk in AWS language about co-sell, a
Right,
co-sell sales motion.
right.
So interestingly enough, you'll be familiar with Salesforce. AWS have their own iteration of Salesforce. So you've got two Salesforce instances, one in Okta, one in AWS. And there's this incredible piece of technology called Tackle.io, which allows those two CRM systems to speak to each other. So we encourage, and I encourage, our sellers, when they are presented with an opportunity with a customer and or a prospect, to register what we call a co-sell
Yeah.
with AWS. So all happens by magic into the AWS sellers CRM, and effectively brings them together to collaborate on an opportunity. And the benefits of doing that clearly are that the AWS sellers generally have quite an extensive knowledge of the key personalities, often
So can I,
seen.
can I just ask there for a second, just clarify, when you say the AWS seller, I thought AWS with the marketplace is an app of sorts in many respects, a kind of digital marketplace.
Service.
But
It's
are
an
you on about
AWS
are you on about the
service.
partner? Are you on about the channel? Have they got a partner? No?
I'm referring to the AWS account executive for the same customer or prospect.
Yeah.
So take, for example, this week alone, we had a call with the AWS rep or AE or seller, as we refer to them,
Right.
with our Okta equivalent.
Seller.
Yeah, seller. It's a bit like batter. You used to refer to batsman and so forth, but now it's a batter. So in the cricket terminology, and the benefit there is that the account intelligence that an AWS seller has is extensive because they're positioning over 200 different AWS services
Right.
into that
Into
customer.
that account. Right.
Yeah, whereas we are clearly very much focused on identity and
Yeah.
identity
Yeah.
access management and compliance and governance and so forth. So our span of attention within that customer is fairly narrow, whereas AWS is quite broad. So they can bring additional account intelligence and information to the party.
Right. Okay. So is there in that mix then? I'm not hearing distributor, and I'm not hearing channel partner. Is that they're not involved in this at all?
Yes, they are. So again,
are.
part of if we look at the ecosystem, because it's
Yes.
very much operating an ecosystem, we at Okta have a partner first
Yeah.
model. So we do have what I would call a traditional channel model,
Right. Right.
where we'd work with a reseller and a distributor. We have 20 distributors, would you believe, Okta today. And we have each region within EMEA has a number of focus partner resellers. So we have regional alliance managers, so not cloud people like me, but alliance managers who look after those partner relationships. We have someone that looks after the distributor relationships. And what those regional alliance managers want to do is encourage our partners to go out, position Okta as a proposition, and what we term originate opportunities,
Right.
which then our sellers work on in conjunction with the partner, but also in collaboration with AWS.
Right. Yeah.
It's very much a all hands to the pump.
It is. It's a team effort, isn't it? It sounds very, very complex.
Well, it can be, but the benefits of working as a team, and clearly most organizations have that one team approach, and we very much have that one team approach, is that people bring different skills, different relationships, and different intelligence sources, back channels, I think is often a phrase that's used, that helps people keep up to speed with the progress of that opportunity from initiation to close.
Right, right. And so, so a typical week. Is there a typical week? I know you're flying around the world again, as you've done in the past. Also, is there big events coming up in Vegas and whatever else? So, what do you do in a typical week?
Okay, typical week. So, if I go back a week and then I'll sort of fast forward. So, a week ago, I was in Seattle for something called the Global Partner Summit. Which was an opportunity for AWS senior leadership to brief a select number of partners. So it was invitation only. And it was great for me to meet other ISVs and partner alliance leaders who can be from Mongo or Zscaler or CrowdStrike, because we work with some of those in what we call a zero trust proposition to support our customers.
Yeah.
But also speaking to AWS senior leadership about what's coming down the road in terms of, and we'll talk about marketplace, I'm sure, at some point. But that's a transaction mechanism. Let's leave it at that. For, in terms of how people choose to buy. But we're talking very much about pipeline generation activities, better collaboration. AWS are looking to introduce distributors into the marketplace now with something called designated seller of record. I'm working on, so when you want to ask what am I working on? I'm working on how do we introduce, let's call it distributor seller of record, into Okta so we can keep our distributors whole.
Yeah. And happy.
And happy, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Particularly if they're originating business. So we want to keep them sweet.
Yeah.
Or whole. But every day I'm getting inbound email traffic from AWS asking us to connect sellers together. So that takes up quite a bit of time throughout the day because it's a global referral system. I'm working with our partners. We're doing enablement sessions with them. We're doing enablement with our field. So when I do travel around Europe, I'm going in to enable or upskill our Okta sellers in what are the best practices around working with AWS. So because you've got to build trust ultimately, and again, we spend a lot of time trying to build trust with our partners, our resellers and distributors, with our AWS sellers, and with our Okta staff. So because if you've got that level of trust, it means that you can share information, widely but securely, and again, hopefully deliver meaningful transactions and outcomes to your customers. I'm going off to the States next week as well, or the week after rather, for an offsite around how we as a global business come together to better support the field. Because we're all expected to have plans with AWS, territory plans, the equivalent of what a seller would have, but their portfolio of accounts. So we need to make sure we're aligned from a strategic perspective with what AWS are asking to do. For example, introduce multi-currency support in the marketplace. So today you can only buy with Okta in US dollars,
right,
via the AWS marketplace, when actually some customers would prefer to purchase in euros or sterling.
Yes, yeah.
So again, taking advantage of those capabilities as they are released by AWS is important for us to embrace on the Okta side. And then one of my jobs is to go around finding the right finance people, the right channel people, and the right operations people to make this stuff happen. So it's a right mixed bag. No day is the same. And at the same time, we've got a business to run. So there's forecasting, no surprise. We all have to forecast. And so I've got a new boss, Josh Green, who's fabulous, comes from AWS with a strong marketplace background. And clearly he's interested in what's our forecast look like. So that we're aligned with the business.
Yeah. But it looks as if from your perspective there, because of course you did a period at AWS yourself. And you've been in kind of the whole cloud arena, cloud alliances, maybe also for maybe the past 8 or 10 years even potentially. So you're leveraging your skills and your capabilities as best as you can, by the sounds of it.
It can often seem, the cloud world, a bit of the world of dark arts.
Right. Yes.
Because it is different. It's different terminology that's used. Used the word extensibility right at the beginning there, right, which pertains to platform, but there's almost like a different language that the AWS folks will use, which will confuse folks that have not had that much to do with cloud and have been used to working with resellers and distributors in what I would call a traditional, traditional sort of go-to-market motion.
Yes. Yeah.
But there's nothing it's that demystifying exercise that I spend a lot of time doing, because there's the old fear, uncertainty, and doubt that comes into anybody's mind if they're not sure of how to initiate either a co-sell registration or how to request a marketplace listing. A customer wants to transact because they have something called a private pricing agreement with AWS.
Okay.
They purchase through the marketplace, they can retire the value of that deal against the quota they've committed to with AWS.
Right. Even
that in itself, that one sentence or extended paragraph, has all sorts of complexity to it. So again, just bringing people down to a common level of understanding and knowledge, having confidence in being able to go to market with AWS, to go to market with Marketplace or a channel partner, because the channel can also transact through Marketplace.
Right.
Is something that everyone's trying to get their head around.
Yes. Again, I'm probably more from that, as I said, the old IT ecosystem, aware of Marketplace. To me, it looked like it's a huge disruptor, but they do seem to be working hand in glove with distributors and with resellers. It seems as if everybody is able to get along, serve the customer, deliver value, and I'm assuming there's a little something in it for everybody involved as well. But
Mark, it's a huge business. AWS are reluctant. I won't reveal any figures here, but safe to say it's a double-digit billion-dollar business for AWS.
Yeah.
So it started, well, I think roughly around 2016, relatively low.
2012, I checked earlier on, I asked on that one. 2012, the beginnings of AWS Marketplace, but it was a very restricted, limited, but it has evolved, we could say rapidly, but also significantly. I mean, it's a, as I said, it's a global, I don't know if I don't often use the word behemoth, but it's monster size in some respects, isn't it? I mean, it is an ecosystem in and of itself.
I call it Pac-Man sometimes when I'm referring to how it goes about just chomping through,
Right.
trying to eat people's lunches. I mean, and the original thought process behind Marketplace was that it would actually replace that traditional reseller distributor
Right.
sales mechanism. But over time, and particularly in Europe, where there is a very strong channel presence, the lobbying that the channel did to AWS resulted in initially resellers being able to transact
Yes.
in the marketplace. And as we just mentioned previously, distributors can now transact through the marketplace. So I'm working on a daily basis with a couple of distributors as well as resellers to make sure that they are enabled to do that, those particular transactions.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It just, and say
it has changed.
Yeah, dramatically. I thought at one point that maybe it was the end of distribution and channel partners as we know it, but because marketplace also from one perspective is like the app store, isn't it? It was in effect for kind of enterprise, but the difference being, I suppose, when we want apps for our mobile phones, we're just a single user. We don't get any support at all. The enterprise customers need an awful lot of support, a lot of guidance. So there's still a lot of requirement for people, whether that is in the selling side, but also more in kind of sales, kind of support and implementation and so on. But you can even buy professional services through Marketplace now, I believe.
You can absolutely do that. And because of the level of importance it's reached within AWS this year, they've changed their compensation model for the AWS sellers in that they will only see recognition for a particular deal that's sold through from an ISV if it's sold through the marketplace. So previously, if they could show influence in a sale, they could get recognition to retire their quota. And that's gone away. So AWS is spending a lot of time this year enabling their field sellers to be able to understand marketplace and to be able to promote more transactions. They pretty much want to double the business globally that they transact through marketplace this year. Wow. I think publicly we've seen by, I think it's 2027, they want to have an 86 or 89 billion dollar business. That's not too far away.
Now, and the $1 billion, wasn't there something posted by Okta on LinkedIn recently? Yep. Is that an annual billing or was that a cumulative?
That's from the start of our time when we listed on to the AWS Marketplace. So we are one of half a dozen, say, ISVs that have transacted in terms of TCV, total contract value, $1 billion through the marketplace. There are others such as CrowdStrike and Palo Alto and so forth, but it's quite a rare badge to be able to acquire, and it's a fantastic achievement for Okta to have done that. I can't claim any credit whatsoever, so big shout out to all the people that have gone before me to make that happen. But it means a lot to AWS. It means a lot to Okta in terms of our relationship, and we're really proud of clearly all the sellers that have contributed to make that happen.
Yeah, no, it's
Clearly.
Yeah, no, well done. Congratulations to all concerned. Now then, I'm going to pivot a little bit here then. So I wanted let's see if we can bring your two elements of your background and personal interest into this here. I wanted to just kind of see, because of course you're a huge sports fan. I don't think it's not just rugby, is it, Shep? I mean, it's probably mentioned cricket. Got a
Well,
mention there with you earlier. You're
yeah, it's mainly rugby.
it
Paddle
is.
tennis has sort of reared its head. Pickle, if you're in the
Oh,
US,
pickleball.
but I'm more of a paddle guy.
Right. Okay.
My boss, I think, will have a little bit of a challenge on the pickle stroke paddle court at some point.
Right. Right.
But no, mainly rugby. I used to do a bit of coaching in the day, and
Right.
now a big fan.
So what I'm interested in is the so you went to Loughborough. Loughborough is steeped in is it a sports it's notorious, I think, isn't it, for its kind of sports science area? But you went there for business studies. But you did play in the first 15. I see there. But where do you see similarities from sport and from perhaps rugby in particular into what are the parallels or similarities in the work that you do now, or the environment, let's say at Okta, but also within the kind of sales world? How do you think sport has helped you?
I just have to do a fact check there in terms of I played first 13 rugby league in my final year. I couldn't possibly ever go first 15 at
Rugby
Loughborough
union.
Rugby Union because the likes of Andy Robinson, John Wells, Dave Edgerton, John Morrison, who went on to play for England, those were the sort of players in the first 15, not the likes of me. So
Plus 13. So what players would? What's the difference? Is it 13 in rugby league? No, there's no flankers. Is it? Is that it was at the right? And were you a flanker?
no, I was a fly half.
Right. Okay. Fantastic. But okay. So
Yeah, going back to your question.
a sports background. What are the parts of your sports experience, as I said, and also from a coaching side, that you think have been of service and have benefited you in your IT career?
So I took a lot of the learnings from Loughborough. So if I go back to that rugby league time, and again, I'm going to date myself here, but I'll say it was in the 80s. Even in the 80s, Loughborough employed a professional rugby league coach to come down and train us twice a week. He was from Wakefield. Mick was I can never remember his surname, unfortunately. But I'm thinking, how forward thinking is that? Or in the mid 80s, that we had a professional coach. I mean, rugby union wasn't professional at that time.
No, that's right.
But we had a professional coach, and all the skills that really focused on handling and what to do when you went into contact stuck with me, so that when I became a coach at Colchester, coaching under 6s to under 15s, pretty much all the drills that he had taught me just stayed with me. So if I convert that to sort of how we work in business, being prepared, being enabled, and again, I've got a little bit of an enablement streak within me, is what makes you, I think, a great seller and also a great partner in that ecosystem we talked about earlier. Because just being able to appreciate the skills that other people bring to the party. So in rugby, you mentioned a flanker. There are people that do, again, dark arts in the scrum. I've never been a part of. But what they do is essential to make the backs successful. They often say the scrum wins you the match and the back's determined by how many points.
Right.
And I think that's true in our sales world as well, in that, the whole ecosystem, if it works perfectly, Marketplace, for example, they talk about bringing you bigger deals, faster transactions. But you can only have done that if your selling motion with your customer and with the channel is working in harmony. And we all know there are bumps in the road with any particular transaction. And often if it's too easy, it's not going to happen. And you actually want those bumps in the road to convince you that the deal is going to happen. And you will need the support of channel. So for example, flexible billing. One of the things that I've very much seen with the channel over the years is vendors like ourselves will say, okay, annual billing only. And the customer will say, oh, we'd like to do quarterly or monthly. And we say, annual billing. And that's where our partners come in and say, don't you worry, Mr. Customer, we'll sort out that flexible billing arrangement for you.
Right. Yeah.
We'll bring that value to the party. And so, that's your flanker there, either making a nice early tackle or jackling over the ball to get the deal back on track. Because if we didn't have the channel, the customer might walk away from that particular opportunity. And so I think it's a recognition of everyone's skills that they bring to the party, making sure you're on the same page and fully enabled. Because again, we're lucky at Okta. We've got some great enablement that takes place for our technical staff and our sellers. But then how do you extend that to the channel? Because ultimately that's how you scale. And you really want your channel to know as much, or almost as much as you do about your solution, so they can position it appropriately. So you've all got to be highly skilled. So fit, you remember those days, Mark, when you were fit?
Hey,
So
I'm much better now than I was 10 years ago, that's for sure.
So again, we had a phrase in the army, fit to fight. So you need to be fit to fight. How are you fit to fight? You'll practice your drills on a regular basis. And whether it can be your presentation skills. You'll know that I'm a huge whiteboard fan, and that whiteboarding is something that you can share with the partner community, that they can grasp, because it's a visual, it often has a narrative, particularly if somebody engages you to produce that narrative, that people can learn. And then that helps level set everybody. So when you all run out onto the field, you know what your role is, you know what you're trying to do, you know what you need to do to help people. And ultimately, after all of these things, whether it's sport or a successful transaction that's concluded, celebrate that success. But clearly drink responsibly.
Yeah, definitely. So that you did mention your military side there. That was the other aspect to it. So you've got I said you've got sports running through your veins, but I don't know enough about Sandhurst, but that is the elite military academy, I think, in the UK.
All British officer training, Mark.
Right. So probably highly regarded worldwide, and say ultimately at the end there you were an instructor as well, weren't you? So, but what elements then? Let's take this perhaps as a second element to it. What elements of your military background and from what you learned at Sandhurst and elsewhere within the armed forces, what parts of that are you now able to apply, and can you see adding value in the work that you do today?
So there's a couple of things there. Personal administration is one of the first things that you learn. If you don't get your personal administration in order, then you're often, you're wearing the wrong kit to something. You're wearing your combat kit to a PT session and so forth. And what we call squaring away your kit after you've done something. So making sure your weapon's clean, making sure your hygiene is of the highest order. So in order for a soldier to function effectively and efficiently, particularly in the field, where it gets wet and windy and miserable, if you're not looking after yourself, then you will fail to perform as a soldier.
Wow.
So as a seller or even an alliance person, just making sure that your personal admin's in good shape. And in that sort of thing, that's the type of, make sure your forecast is in good shape, make sure that your territory plan or your strategic plan is in place. And I wouldn't say I'm hounded, but I am constantly reminded by my AWS counterpart that, we need to get tighter around our planning to make sure we're aligned. Because that's really key. Prior planning and preparation prevents performance.
Right, okay.
I beat myself out there.
Yes.
But that mnemonic is really important to make sure that you prepare for meetings. How many times does a manager come in and say, do you have an agenda for that meeting? What's the outcome we're trying to get? So being prepared for meetings, really important. Making sure you've got the right people showing up. Again, I'm a great believer in introducing the right person to have a meeting, not necessarily going four-legged, but if your sales engineer, solution architect can take a meeting on their own with somebody, you can go off and meet somebody else. So you can sort of increase your field of fire, if you like.
Absolutely, your exposure,
Yeah. And again, just being respectful of people's skills and talents and making the most of them. Because again, in the army, everyone learns a trade. I happen to work in logistics. I happen to serve with Gurkha soldiers. We learned the language as British officers. Everybody goes off and learns how to speak Nepalese, how to write Nepalese,
Right.
because that's an important way of integrating with your soldiers. So again, just being respectful of your support staff. So again, think about people who are taking those support calls from customers. How often do you check in with your support team to make sure that, you acknowledge what they're doing and is bringing goodness to your customer? So you've got your engineers, you've got your support staff, then you've got your marketeers. And again, we have some fantastic marketing activities that take place, which again involve the channel. And we're doing, this year we've just decided to sponsor McLaren from a Formula One perspective. And the opportunities that then gives us, certainly in terms of being attractive to prospects or customers coming to an event at the McLaren factory, is really key. But again, understanding how to leverage that is really important. So marketeers are good at that. Sellers, not necessarily their best skill set they have. So I'm sure I've forgotten loads of other people that I should mention in terms of that team. But the army is a big team that only functions when all the moving parts work. So logistic, you can't win a battle with a tank if you don't have fuel, if you don't have ammunition, and the soldiers haven't been fed. How do you feed them? How do you water them? How do you keep the vehicles on the road? All of that requires team effort, logistical support, and it's no different in sales. You'll be familiar with the phrase lone wolf. I think the days of lone wolf salesmen hopefully have been consigned to the bin. But to be successful now in the modern world, I think you've got to be like an all-arms seller. So you've got to embrace the channel, you've got to embrace the marketeers, the support team, the engineers.
Yes.
And almost like a conductor in an orchestra, bring the best out of them.
Well, that's the role of perhaps the Cloud Alliances leader then, I would have thought, is it? I mean, that's beautifully brought all the way back there. You must have thought that through before we started speaking here today. But I said that I think that I've just kind of, I wondered, I can see the sports analogies, the military ones are kind of as you go through them there in terms of preparation makes an awful lot of sense. I'd not heard that phrase personal administration before.
Huge.
But you can see how, as you said, if that is not in place, everything else ultimately at some point failure will appear on the horizon, and it might be, isn't it? I think there's an old story about if it wasn't for the
one to the nail. Is that where you're going?
That's it. That's where I'm going. That's exactly where I'm going.
Is
that a military academy? Is that a military academy? That's one of the basic teachings, I would have thought. Is it?
Pretty sure it goes back to Napoleonic times or something like that.
Yes, I believe so. So I said, listen, I did some training last week. The old Sun Tzu came out again. Remember Sun Tzu and the Art of War, which you would probably have encountered. Again, lots of business applications there. Hey, listen, Shep, you've been very generous with your time. I'm very generous also. I said you've opened the kimono extensively then. I appreciate you, your candor. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Have a good trip out to the US, and as I said, thanks very much for being with us today. We'll have you on again at some point in the not too distant future, by which point I'm sure there'll be even more significant advances and changes and evolution within the marketplace. But until that time, thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Mark, for your time, and you look after yourself and keep singing.
I will do. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Mark.
Super.